Hello, welcome to Only God Rescued Me, my journey from satanic ritual abuse. I'm Lisa Meister, your host, and I am delighted to bring to you today Randy and Cynthia Lail. And they have just come out with their book, Our Born Identity, How My Sexual Addiction Was Broken Through the Power of Jesus Christ. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. We're glad to be here.
Thank you. Thrilled to be here.
Thanks for coming. This is exciting. You wrote a book together. There's not many people that write a memoir as a married couple. How did this come about?
It didn't start out that way. When I had been working for years writing my memoirs, and felt like I got to the end of it, and I didn't know what to do next. I knew God was calling us to write a book, or calling me to write a book. We have our, in the time, and it never even dawned on us that it would be something we would do together. So I was. Why don't you tell the story how you got involved?
Oh, he'd been writing the book for years and writing his memoirs, and then he was like, we need to write this book, and we felt like his job was getting on the line for a problem, having some issues at work, and so I was like, you know what? Okay, God, we will write the book. Don't take the job. Don't take the job. We'll write the book. And so I said, we just need to find somebody to write it because we have no clue how to do it. So we Googled a good Christian author, and we found Rebecca Davis, who was amazing to work with. And so it just came together like that. And then she's the one who came up with the idea that Randy would write a chapter and then I would write a chapter. And then she helped us with that. And so it worked out good. We've had a lot of good response that having the two points, what was going on with me and the kids right after what was happening with him. So yeah, that's how we got through it.
Yeah, she posed the idea to us that us doing this together would be really beneficial to people in marriages, and to give both perspectives of what, I was suffering with the PTSD and going through in the recurring memories, and Cynthia trying to be supportive and managing through that, and her frustrations and strain on our marriage. And it was really beautifully written the way that was weaved in. And but yeah, Rebecca did a tremendous job. We were really pleased to work with her.
Well, the spouse is always the unsung hero that we don't hear from in the stories, and very important part of the healing process. So I'm really glad your voice is there. So okay. If you hadn't been there, what would have happened?
Yeah, I always wonder where he would have ended up if the memories had stayed. We'll have to go through our story, but for a long time he didn't even know what had happened to him that was gone until the flashback started. So he did great for quite a few years, but once the flashback started, I don't know if he didn't have the support. Well, if he didn't have God, I know he really would have had a problem, but without the support in the family that he had already been able to build, I don't know what would have happened, how he would have gotten through it.
Even through the unhealthy lifestyle I was living at the time, I had a healthy respect for the marriage from the standpoint that it scared me to death if we weren't together, and not having that security for me. It was security the way I looked at it, but I didn't treat it that way. I mean, I did not treat her well and treat her with the respect that I was trying to hold on to inside. It was very hard to describe and understand. I even tried a couple of times to leave because I thought I wanted the lifestyle that I was running after to fill the voids that were inside of me. That I wanted that more than I wanted marriage. And every time I would leave, I mean, I have a breakdown. And through the grace of God, I mean, she allowed me to come home both times. And I don't know where I would have wound up. I don't know that I can't say that I wouldn't be still here, but I doubt it. I don't think I would have made it. There was many opportunities that I shouldn't be sitting here today. I should be 6 foot under.
So people would say, why would you let him come back?
I kind of believe God let me meet him and know him for quite a few years before this started, so that I knew there was a good man underneath all this, and that one day we would get through it. I don't know if I really thought we would ever get through it, but never dreamed that we would be at this point where he would be completely over it. But yeah, I just loved him, and I knew that wasn't him. When he left, I knew he'd come back. There was no way he was going to desert us like that and come back. So I just kept taking him back and we just kept getting through it. But I have a cousin whose husband had a major addiction problem. And she says that as long as he was trying, I was trying. And I think that was part of it, because Randy was always trying to get better. He went through so much therapy, painful therapy, but he never gave up. He never just accepted it. And I think that made a huge difference, that he was working so hard to get better.
Well, I think it's important that you're saying too, that the sexual addiction was not Randy.
Right.
That was not who you were.
The hard part was we didn't know what caused it. We met in the 9th grade at Providence Baptist Church in Charlotte, North Carolina, in the youth group. And at that point, his abuse had stopped. He passed out at school, and that going to the hospital and giving him shock therapy and everything scared his father so bad that all the abuse stopped. And so when we met, neither one of us knew what was in his history. That's why it was for so long. If we had known, I think it would have made a difference. We would have known what was going on, but we didn't. But since we've been doing this, God's given me a picture of our marriage is like a house on a hill. But what we didn't realize was that hill was a volcano. And it wasn't long into our marriage before all of a sudden there were rumblings, and then there were some pretty major eruptions. But at the end, he showed me that it was held together by God glue, and that's what kept us together. And so we survived. But we got married after we both went off to college, and things were good for a few years. And then all of a sudden the sexual addiction started flaring up.
Yeah.
So
it creeped in very slowly. It's not that I hadn't seen porn before. I had, but I got one of the Penthouse forums and was reading through some of the articles in it, and I came across the BDSM articles, and it hit something inside me. It triggered, and it just ignited a hunger. And I know now what it was tapping into was all the conditioning that had happened to me during my years of being groomed through those early years to the point of being involved in pedophilia and the satanic rituals and all. But it just hit something in there that was just laying under the surface, and it just woke it up, and it just set off a storm of feelings, and I couldn't get enough of it. I was obsessed with finding books that had BDSM material in it. And so, I mean, I knew where all the bookstores were and were in adult, and I would go comb through the stuff and find it, because that was before internet days. You had to go manually hunt for it. And I was just so enthralled with it. I wanted Cynthia to be enthralled with it too. So I drug her into it, and that started that kind of opened some.
my thought on that was, if I don't do this with him, he's going to find somebody else, and he's going to go elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I will help this way, and I can also protect, be there to know what's going on or whatever. I hated every second of it. Oh my gosh, I hated it so much. It was horrible, but we got through it. I kept thinking, I'm just going to tell him I'm not going to do it, and then what's he going to do? He's going to go out the door, and he's just going to find somebody that will do it. So. Mm-hmm. But that was a lot of years of our marriage, our early marriage. I mean, we even had kids while that was going on.
Oh, yeah.
And so, but
things became, as years passed, things became a lot more accessible and easier to get, a little more privately done over the computer and ordering materials and stuff like that. So, but Cynthia always says this, and I know this about myself. If I'm all in, I'm all in. And I don't do it halfway.
He doesn't do anything halfway.
So, I found a lot of people in the lifestyle, went all the months groups and did play parties, role play parties, all that kind of stuff. And then Cynthia would tag along sometimes, or I would go by myself.
Oh, when I was forced, I tagged along.
And, so it was, but all it was doing was just reinforcing what was laying underneath, reinforcing that grooming, reinforcing all that conditioning that was done. And but like I said, I had no idea what was going on. Just like any addiction, though, it takes more, and it takes more, and it takes more. So I wasn't satisfied with magazines. I had to go to, meeting people at that time, and then getting involved. And, so I had my time where, a couple of prostitutes here and there that would play the role play. And then I started finding groups that were meeting and got involved with other groups, and actually even ran into, and I won't say who, but ran into actually a family member, extended family member, that had no idea that we saw each other at one of these parties, and went, wow. So it was just interesting that, you think about the generational sins and the stuff of the family that goes down through the family. So I thought it was pretty interesting to look back on that and realize that, maybe it's in our family on back. This problem had been part of it.
Sure.
And so, because I know personally, just in watching the outward, ways some of my, extended family, not talking about my immediate family, but out the extended families, that they're struggling. They're struggling with life.
Yeah.
And so it's so I can understand it greatly, but yeah, it evolved, and to a point that it was it began to be destructive, to a point that, couldn't, the only other next level I could go to after it finally got to the end was to immerse myself into that lifestyle. And I just became obsessed with it, to the point that I lost my business. Was really, probably had pretty much at that point blown the marriage up, but we were staying together for the kids. It's a terrible reason to stay together for, but I'm glad we did. And
we filed bankruptcy. We lost everything.
Yeah,
he was just so focused on the lifestyle. He had his own business, and he was just letting the business go because he was so focused on this. But then he, once we lost it all, we moved to Charleston.
Mm-hmm.
And then have been here ever since, and then just go church.
Yeah.
And I know that survivors can go one of two directions, that they become asexual or they become promiscuous.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting. It's usually one of two directions.
Yeah.
So it's a very normal response of what you did.
Yeah. I was really struggling as to what my identity was in that lifestyle, because what I didn't realize from what was going on in the conditioning, I was really drawn to cross-dressing and identifying as a woman, and just realizing how conflicted I was with it. But the allure to it in this, I keep referring back to the conditioning, but because during my conditioning as a kid, that's what they were doing to me. They were cross-dressing me as a child, and in reinforcing, this is the way you really should be. This is who you are. You don't have any self-worth as a man or a boy, or it was really just destructive. But all that was resonating at that time. I didn't understand why. I just couldn't figure it out. I even tried it. Cynthia and I even experimented, and it was just so confusing. And but it was just interesting how we search for who our identity is, and I was trying all the wrong ways to find it in the world, and never really looking to the one true person who has our identity and knows who we are, was Jesus. And so it took me a long time to get to that point. Yeah.
So how did your past come back? Where did the flashback start for you?
Around 48. I was on fire at that point. I was praying. I was really in relationship with Christ. I mean, I thought I had a good relationship with Christ. I really probably didn't, compared to what I know today. But we were very involved in our church at the time, the Seacoast Church here in Charleston, and I was involved in a number of prayer ministries and this different stuff. I was just trying to keep myself busy, trying to stay in the Word and stay focused. But I was praying one morning, and I just told God, I said, I really want to know you more intimately. I want to get to know you better than I know you now. And I always felt like I thought I was hearing from God, and just, just kind of hearing like a small voice maybe, or an impression, or confirming something in the word. But this was the first time I heard him speak, literally speak. And it shocked me. And he said, if you want to know me better, I got to show you something first. And I said, bring it. And that was my first flashback. It hit me right there while I was in prayer. And it wrecked me, just really wrecked, because it wasn't just a flashback. It's just a glimpse, just literally quicker than you can see. And but the impact of the emotions and what I felt lasted for a long time. I mean, it just wrecked me that day. And then each day it would repeat and repeat and repeat, and more would come in. And oh my gosh, I went to see my pastor, and I feel so bad for him, because I was a mess, literally an emotional mess. I couldn't even talk about it without literally just completely breaking down and crying. I mean, exhausting cry. And even my body was shaking from it. And I'd never experienced anything like that. I didn't know what was happening. I remember getting mad about it. I said, "This is knowing you better? Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
I mean,
I disagree with you on this. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't understand. I didn't understand.
Yeah.
And it went on for a number of months, to a point to where I just finally said, I'm not doing this anymore with you. I said, I'm done. And I said, I just hung everything up. I quit. I mean, I didn't quit going to church because I wanted to keep the peace, because Cynthia wanted to go, so I went. But I didn't. I mean, I didn't pray. I quit everything I was doing. I didn't go to small groups anymore. I didn't do anything. I just showed up on Sunday or Saturday night at church, and that was all I did. That was it. And I didn't pray for nearly 2 years. And I made the decision myself. I said, I knew how to do this before. I can still do it. I'll stuff it and go on with my life. And that's what I did. And that worked for about 2 years. And then it all just coming out of the seams again, and spent some more time with pastors. And then the memories started flooding in again. And I finally just said, yeah, I look back on it. I was kind of angry because I wasn't getting help from the church at the time, but it was blind anger. I didn't really understand why I was angry. I was just mad. And I wanted them to fix it, and but we finally came to the conclusion. I said, I need to go get professional therapy.
We tried hard to find a Christian counselor, and we just could not. And so finally we decided we just got to find a counselor, because obviously praying over him is not going to work. And
so I reached out. I found a website. It's an organization called Darkness to Light, and they're an awareness for child sexual abuse. They equip schools and stuff like that, churches, for just to be watch for the signs. And anyway, they had a resource on there for therapists, and that's where I found my therapist. And she was wonderful, absolutely wonderful. And she's in the books. Dr. Mark's in the book. And she specialized in childhood sexual abuse, PTSD, which were the main things I needed to deal with at the time. And it wasn't long into the sessions that she tested or evaluated me for PTSD, and she said, "Man, you're just off the charts, Randy." And it felt like I was off the charts. I mean,
but we had no idea. We never expected.
She recommended
PTSD sounded like soldiers or policemen or so we were shocked.
I didn't have. I mean, I've heard about PTSD. Everybody has. You hear about it in the news, but I didn't have any. I never associated it with something like this. So I just didn't even consider the fact that I could have PTSD. And she put me on some medication because the memories and the anxiety and everything it was coming out was just causing all that anxiety and panic. And she said, "I think you need to take a little something." She said, "It won't be long, but just take a little something, take the edge off, so you can process all this stuff a little better." And so I agreed to do that, because I hate taking medication. Anything like that, because I had taken it in the years past, the depression medication. I hated it, the way it made me feel. Yeah. And but I was a good boy and did what I was told. And we worked through. We did EMDR therapy, No, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, EMDR therapy. I get confused with all the acronyms, and that did really well. I actually I felt like I got really good at it in the flow, from a flow standpoint, and the memories were just pouring out. And none of them were any in particular order; they were all jumbled up. But I was getting some, it was producing. It was hard. It was just so difficult. I mean, I hated going to therapy. Hated it.
Was it all the pedophilia stuff, or was it
Well,
satanic rituals too?
the for early memories that were coming out were primarily just me and my dad. So it was just, him molesting me. It kind of grew from there. So it's kind of like the way I was explained is your brain will release things that it feels like you're ready to take. So it won't. That's what she said. She said it wouldn't come in any particular order. It did move in. I did get years into the therapy. I mean, I was from around 2013 to 17. I saw her, and the EMDR did really well for a period of time, and then it finally got to the point, which I found out later was the satanic memories. The EMDR wouldn't break through to them. I couldn't get broke. I was too panicked, as the fear was too high, and I just could not do it. And so we eventually we reached a wall. We hit a wall. I was really, really struggling, and Cynthia came out on the porch, and we kind of had it out. So tell her.
One thing with his abuse, it started with his dad and then progressed to somebody that his dad worked with, which then involved the lady who grew his girlfriend, who was the groomer for him, and that led to the real pedophilia. But we believe his father was probably blackmailed into the second part. His dad started the train, but it got off the rails real quick, and he was we truly believed he was blackmailed into it. So but Randy, we would stand in the kitchen and he would just sob. My shirt would just be soaked from his tears from just standing there while he cried and cried. And so they finally, when they hit that wall, I told him one day, I said, you know what? I said, I need to go talk to your therapist, because I just kept having these feelings, and he was more than happy for me to go. And I told her, I said, I just truly believe he's going to be laying on his deathbed and he's going to say, I let my dad take the first 14 years of my life, but then I gave him the rest of my life. I let him ruin my entire life. Why can he not just put it away? It happened. It was horrible. Put it away and get on with your life. And so the whole time for years, that's what I kept thinking. And she explained to me, she said, oh, Cynthia, he can't. The brain will not let him. Those short-term memories have to be processed. And it made all the difference in the world. It totally changed our marriage. Once I understood that he could not just forget it, then we were a team. So, I mean, I would tell people going through this, don't think they can just forget it. They can't. They absolutely cannot. She said those memories will just keep scratching and scratching until he processes them. And he had hit this wall to where he could go no further. And so then we were a team. I was like, we are going to figure this out. Yeah. We are going to.
That was really transformative to our marriage, because we were, like she said, we became a team at that point, instead of me feeling like I was carrying the burden of all of it and I couldn't share it.
Right.
And so we kind of reached a compromise on what I shared, just because it's just, some of it was tough.
It was too much for me to have in my head.
But we were doing it together, and how she was supportive. And if I needed my space after a trauma session, which I did, I needed some space and some time just to I just got to decompress. I got to process this for a few minutes before I can actually engage with you in a conversation that's productive. Sure. So
one morning I was sitting there reading the paper, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, but it was called a sofa store fire down here in Charleston, where 9 firemen died. And it was a horrible, horrible thing. But there was one of the survivors, and he had been through a study, clinical study that had helped him with this PTSD. And so I read it to Randy. I said, "You think this would help?" And he was like, no, that won't help me.
Well, they used ecstasy in combination.
It was MDMA.
Yes,
what they used.
They used ecstasy in combination with clinical therapy. and it was under an FDA trial, and so it's very experimental. But most people don't realize that MDMA is the real medical term for ecstasy. Ecstasy, the street name, but it was created originally for cognitive therapy. Back in the 70s, that's all they used it for, and it got out into
hijacked into the clubs,
into the raves club drug. And
because
anyway,
it lowers the fear and raises the confidence. So it's a perfect drug, but it's also perfect for facing these memories that he was just his body just couldn't bear to face.
So my therapist said, she said that I feel like I want to recommend you into this program because I really feel like you're going to need this to be able to get past this block. I said, you need something to help you move forward. And so I said, I was all for it. I was skeptical, but I decided, she knew the people that were conducting the trial, and she said I'll make a recommendation. And she called them during our session, and we spoke on the speakerphone. And so they gave us instructions on how to apply, and so we did. It was a couples therapy. This particular one they were doing at the time, it was for one person, a couple with one person suffering from PTSD and a significant other
who had secondhand PTSD.
So it was so we both participated in the exact same stuff, and so as we went through it, and it was pretty rigorous approval process. We almost got kicked out because of some health checks we had to go through. They wanted to make sure we were healthy enough to live through the trial.
So we had to have all kinds of ultrasounds and blood work and all these kinds of things, but they were very thorough, but it ended up being amazing.
Yeah, it was. There's a lot of pre-work to it. They do a lot of cognitive study, baseline setting, just so they can track how well as you come through it, how you progress. And then you have the trial, which is the 2 sessions, which are basically 2 8-hour days where you're under the influence of the drug, and they have the therapists there, both 2 psychologists there with you. One's the cognitive specialist, the other one's monitoring the ecstasy.
He's an emergency room doctor, so we felt very safe.
Yeah, so we it was amazing. I didn't know what to expect, but I was trying not to be too hopeful through it either, because I just had hope dashed so many times that I was really afraid to hold on to hope at that point. I was really, I'm not sure if I'd be sitting here today if that thing didn't work. That was almost my last Hail Mary.
Wow. And you were able to access the SRA memories there?
You were able to access the memories.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Backing up just a little bit, one of the things Dr. Marks said to me was that because I was struggling with a lot of symptoms and things like that. She says, Randy, we got to heal the PTSD. We got to get you through this PTSD and get you through this trauma. She said, because I was complaining, I'm still struggling with sexual addiction stuff. I'm still important. And she said, give yourself a break. She said, you got enough going on dealing with this. Let's deal with this first, and then we'll have time to deal with this later. And it was almost like I had a relief from that standpoint. I was able to kind of let down. Well, I don't have to fight 2 fronts. I can just fight this one front. So, but I realized now, going through the trial, we were fighting the PTSD. We were fighting the trauma. We needed to, you needed to heal the brain. There was a podcast I heard not long ago where it was about the brain and the mind, and he was explaining the difference between the brain and the mind. He said the mind is all your mind, it's all your will, your emotions, all those things that go into who you are. He said your brain is the vessel that holds it. So it's no different than a computer. You got a computer and you got a software program that runs it. He said you got a brain and you got a mind that runs it. So, but if your brain physically can be broken and your mind be okay. So it was kind of neat understanding about how that comes together, because I really felt like, the PTSD, I mean, my brain was broken. It was keeping my mind from working, so it's just a matter of, so we got to heal first, and then we can start to let the mind can start putting everything back together again. That's exactly what happened. So when I went through the clinical trial, the sessions were nothing short of just, I mean, it was a supernatural intervention. we prayed ahead of time coming into this. We asked God to be a part of it and be in it. We didn't know what that was going to look like until the session started. So we get ready to sit down, and they're getting ready to administer the drugs to us. It was kind of funny. I'll tell you this. He has the 2 pills in his hands, and he's holding them out. It made me think of the Matrix with Morpheus giving Leo the 2 choices of the 2 drugs: go down the rabbit hole or go out. And so, but what it was 2 doses of the medications, so we could have one higher than the other. So I said, well, I want that one. I want the one I want the strongest one, because I want to make sure this thing works. So take more is better, right? So, I laid back in the chair. It was kind of the setting. The setting was we were both sitting in lazy boy chairs. We had headphones on, playing really weird music. It was like a
yoga music is what I call it.
And put on little blindfolds, like sleeping blindfold. We laid back in a chair, and he gave me an instruction and said, he said, Randy, your brain knows how to heal itself. And all you got to do is get out of its way. Just so lay back, clear your mind, and just let the drug take effect, and just let your brain go to work. And so I said, okay, that sounds simple enough. And man, as soon as I laid back and relaxed for a minute, you already feeling the drug taking effect. All of a sudden I go in this vision, and I'm sitting on the floor of my bedroom as a child, around 3 years old. I mean, I'm looking around. I mean, I can draw the room. I can tell you what was on the walls. I mean, I can tell you how the furniture was arranged in it. It was really unbelievable. And I've verified this, because I've asked my sister, and I asked my older brother before he passed about what my room looked like. I said, yeah, that's exactly what it looked like. And so anyway, so I'm sitting there, and I'm looking at my crib, seeing me in it. My middle brother is sleeping in the bunk bed, and Jesus is sitting with me on the floor to my left.
Oh,
And
wow.
And I start watching these events unfold, and kind of how that particular moment I described was where I first fell out of the crib, and my parents. That was the time I fell out, hit my head trying to get up in the morning. Then my parents decided, well, it's time for me to go into a real bed. And so they put me in the bed. My brother was sleeping in, and moved him to the other room. And that's not shortly after that is when the abuse started.
He was alone.
I was alone in the room. So that was showing me these things. And then it started, it's kind of been a third person type thing. I'm watching it happen to me, and I'm watching what's going on. So I go through all these memories, and it goes from being a child all the way up to 14 years old when it all ended.
Wow.
And the whole 8 hours.
So you got it all at once.
Tracking through the whole thing. It wasn't everything. It was significant things in the timeline, and that I think that God needed me to see. It answered some whys. It answered. I could see these things and process these memories, and it was like I was processing them. It was difficult, very, very, very difficult to watch.
There were times his whole body would just be shaking, like he was having a seizure almost. And other times he'd be in a fetal position. It was very painful to watch. I just laid back and said, God, if there's anything you need to show me, show me. Otherwise, I'm going to just be praying for him the whole time, that you're with him and walking through him. And he was in so much pain that at one point I said, I've got to hug him. I can't stand this anymore. And the doctor was like, no, stay there. And he went over and just lightly touched him and that kind of stuff, just so he knew he wasn't alone. But then we come to find out Jesus was with him every step of the way, but the body had to process that pain as much as his brain did.
Yeah. So
now you were taking the drugs as well?
That was the couple study.
But you weren't going through but you were still more cognizant and aware.
I don't think there was anything God needed to show me. There was, it was a very nice, relaxing, felt great. And I did talk to Jesus a fair amount, but the most of the time I was just watching him. I would pull my blindfold up, and they were okay with it because they knew. But
it was important for me that she was there.
Yeah, sure.
And I think that was part of what helped me be so relaxed and be able to that I knew someone was there. I mean, not that they didn't care for me, but it wasn't my wife.
Yeah. Sure.
And, so
But he would go through and have a really bad time, and then he would sit up and we'd get water, go to the bathroom, and have a snack or something, and then he would say, okay, I'm ready to go back, and he'd lay back again, and they would start again. So
it was a really cool rhythm. I mean, it was a good rhythm. I mean, if it was too much when I was in division, if it was too much for me to see, I'd say stop. I said, stop, I can't do this. And it would stop. And then, I'd catch my breath and then lay back down and go back into division again. But every time, I mean, Jesus he was right there with me. He would either put his arm around me, encourage me, or he'd hold my hand, or he'd just tell me, you can do this. I'm here. It's okay. You can watch this. And, but it's just, like I said, it was just specific events that happened to me that I felt like I needed to see. And some of the stuff I'd already processed through with Dr. Marks. So, so the first session went along. It was really exhausting. I mean, the shaking and the body issues and all were going on. They described as body memory. That your body, you have trauma memories, and your body has memories, and your body's got to let that energy release that energy. And so it was I was so exhausted. I mean, it was like 7:30. I was sound asleep that night. We had to spend the night at the clinic because we couldn't leave under the influence. So
they had somebody stay there and monitor us at night.
Yeah, so
but you were able to see what was blocked with that.
The satanic memories came. So after we went through the both sessions, I mean, they were amazing and enlightening, and it was very supernaturally interaction. But the satanic memories rolled in after. The way they explained it was once you process the PTSD and get through that, because after I came out of the second session, when they evaluated me for PTSD, I didn't even hardly register anymore.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was gone. I didn't have any effects from it. And he said, now the way what they said would happen after is it will be like a floodgate opening up. Your brain is going to all of a sudden now start going to work, and it's going to start organizing and sorting out all these memories, and you're going to start going through them. He said, you're going to have some emotions with it, and it's going to upset you, but it's not going to be like it was with the PTSD when you re-experience it.
Is it because you understood things better, do you think?
Well, the way they explained the PTSD was how the trauma was locked in those short-term memories, and they never processed. So when you went to sleep at night, those memories didn't process into long-term memories. So it was whatever was hung up in the trauma was processed out, whatever was hung up at that point. So the blocks were, it's kind of hard to describe, because when I was journaling and writing my memoirs, it was almost like a supernatural experience too. Because I would sit and write. I would write for hours, and I wasn't even aware that hours passed. I mean, I was just writing, just typing, and most of the detail of the I mean, I did get satanic memories in the sessions, but the details of the satanic memories didn't come till later. So it's like I processed the trauma, but I didn't have to go through all the memories during that. I don't know if that makes any sense or not. I mean, it's hard to describe.
So more like the emotions came out during the sessions, like the information more.
Yeah. So it's like the memory recovery afterwards, like your brain's now not in flight mode anymore. So
Right.
So all those memories that were stuffed away are all just kind of coming in now. So so I had memories from the sessions of the satanic, but I didn't have all the details. I remember some of the rituals. I remember some of the acts that I had to be. I kind of, through those visions, I went back through those. But what I didn't get was all the extra stuff, the details of what happened at this camp that I went to. I call it the camp from hell in the book. And that's in the appendix part. That was the stuff we had to put in the back. But it's really detailed and graphic, and goes into the satanic cults. This camp was, in my opinion, was done. The reason I was there was to break me. I was resisting. So it was kind of a final way to break me. And there were two events that really happened in there. One was about where I was put inside a box. And the box was nailed shut. I was strapped in the box. The box was nailed shut, and they threw the box into the lake.
Oh.
And the box started going down head first. And I just felt the water pouring in around my head. And I was gagged. I was screaming, and all I could do was hear my groomer, Sue, laughing at me and telling me I was a worthless piece of shit, and that it was never going to amount to anything, and they were done with me. And they basically just said, "We're done with you, and we're basically saying it was going to be treated like an accident, that I drowned." And I was panicking and just trying to scream out that, "Okay, I'll do anything you want, just let me out." And as the water was coming up over my head, I just said, I just had a realization, "Oh my God, I'm going to die." And after that, I just felt this peace come over me, this peaceful feeling come over me. It's kind of like, I'm gone. I'm going. And then the next thing I know, I'm waking up the next morning in a bed in her cabin. And I was completely broken at that point. Whatever they wanted me to do, all this, the sexual acts, the servicing of each of them, complete cross-dressing, making up my face, using me to satisfy other people in the part. I mean, it was just all that. So I don't know how much details you want to go into, but it's that led to a day of just complete degradation. I mean, wasn't much left. And that night was there was going to be that night. She said, "We got to prepare you. There is we're having a event tonight." And it was after midnight.
How far do you want to go into this?
As far as you want to go.
I mean, can your audience handle? I mean, he's getting into some pretty rough stuff. I don't know.
It's a trigger warning for people that want to check out now. It's a good time, and people that want to listen, they can.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm probably
it's in the book.
I wasn't sure I was even going to go to this, but just kind of evolved. So,
but because we can skip over this and go to where God showed him what happened in the box, and just leave the other out there, or we can go into it. It's pretty rough. I don't know how. I assume you can cut this part out. So I don't know.
It's up to you, Randy.
Yeah. Well, you had asked a couple of times about satanic ritual, so I was just trying to see if that's where we wanted to go or not. So
you can go there.
So you can edit around all this, I guess, right? Yeah. So the second event that happened was the event that evening. It was after midnight when it started, and probably closer to between midnight and 3 in the morning. And I was made up. I mean, I couldn't even recognize myself. I was the way that the transformation that they did with me. And she had a friend come in that did all the makeup, and then they dressed me, and then they took me off to this place. And we come in, you can smell the smoke, incense, all kind of stuff that you can smell in the air. And I walk inside this room, this big room, and you see the candles everywhere burning. People are in robes, chanting going on everywhere. There's a big table in the middle. There's two tables. One table has candles in there, has two chalices and a bowl in the middle. And then on the other table was my friend from camp, was strapped down on the table. His name was Bobby. And there's this chapter in the book about Bobby. I'm kind of telling you a little bit about it, but what I left out was they had drugged me. They had given me something to drink, and I was just, everything was weird. Everything I looked at, everything I saw, it seemed warped. When I look, they had to basically guide me. and then would punish me if they let me go and I didn't walk right. And but I guess I was just, whatever it was. I had a friend told me he thought it might have been LSD or something like that, but I have no idea. But I was instructed to do it, basically to do as I was told, and I was led up to this table next to Bobby, and I was looking at him. I mean, tears were coming out of his eyes, but he wasn't moving at all. He was motionless. And I looked at him and I just couldn't stop staring at him. And I was told to pick up the knife. And I just kept not wanting to do it, just fighting, I guess, inside. And then one of the men in the robes that was chanting nearby grabbed my hand, picked up the knife and plunged it into him. And I just watched the life slip out of him. What's not in the book is what I saw them do to him afterwards. I mean, it was bloodletting and filling the bowls with blood and mixing it and whatever else they did. I mean, I was even forced to drink. And as other people did too, and swear allegiance to Moloch.
Yeah. And that's the unfortunate thing about SRA that we've all been through.
Yeah.
And that's what's not talked about.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing it on and sharing
that was
with us.
That's the raw stuff. I mean, that was the stuff that was the big block. And just sharing is helpful. Sharing our story, and I agree with you. Sharing our story and sharing these stories, they need to be shared because people don't talk about them, and they're not. They seem so far out and bizarre. I remember telling my therapist one time some of the memories I was having. I said, it's just hard to believe. It just doesn't seem real. And she goes, I said, could I just be making this stuff up? And she looked at me and said, your brain doesn't work that way. You can't make stuff up like this.
Yeah.
And not with the emotions and everything tied to it. And it just yeah. But a little later, this was years after the clinical trial, I was working with a just a wonderful Christian counselor here in Charleston, Kathy, and I had a couple of visions in the EMDR sessions that we were doing because I was trying to clean. I was really kind of trying to heal spiritually. Physically, I was through, so I was kind of really trying to understand things and just really heal on a spiritual level. And we did a lot of work together. It was amazing. It was really good. There was this one time I had this vision with her, and it was about that box. And I'm standing on the shore with Jesus, looking at two men standing next to the box that I remember. And it took me a kind of a second to realize what I was looking at. And I just kind of felt this panic raise up in me. And Jesus put his arm on my back and looked at me, and he says, basically, go down there. And I'm looking at him like, what?
I know it's down there. I don't want to go down.
I don't want to go down there. Yeah. And but he tells me very insistently that I need to go. And I go down there and I get to the box. I keep looking back at him. And I get down there and the two men put me in the box. They strap me in it. And start to put the lid on. And then all of a sudden I hear, stop. Jesus says, stop. He walks down there. He takes me out. He gets in it.
Oh, wow.
They strap him in and put the lid on it. And they throw it up the lake.
Wow.
And I'm watching it go down like it did with me. And I just want to run out there and help him. And sorry. And there's a couple other back and forths in there. I'm jumping back between being there and then being in the box and out of the box, and then I'm jumping back to being in the cabin where I wake up the next day. And but what he was showing me there was that he took my place. That's what happened to me when I thought I was dying.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
You know, whatever the other parts and pieces that happened, you know, outside of that got me back in that room, he took my place and he allowed me to not die there. And so yeah, that was a really cool story. And it was part of healing me. You know, that was something I needed to see. It was showing that he was showing me all the places that he touched my life along the way and how he covered me. And, you know, so, you know, it's kind of showing me his involvement in my story, where he was at. There's another instance that I had happen with Kathy was about a heart healing. I was standing in this dark room. There was a fire going in the fireplace, big rock fireplace, real rustic looking, big mantle on it. And there was this little box sitting up on the, you know, really kind of a, like a metal box that had holes cut in it. And you can see a dim glow inside of it. And, you know, I just noticed it. And then this little boy walks in the room, and I realize the little boy's me. Walks over to the fireplace, starts looking up at that box, just staring at it. And then all of a sudden, this Jesus appears and he goes, "Hey, Randy." The little boy turns around. I turn around. We both kind of turn around and look at him at the same time. And the little guy runs over to Jesus and jumps up in his arms. And when Jesus hugs him, I feel the hug. And I was pretty blown away at the experience. And he said, he asked for the heart. He's at the man. He said, "Can I have your heart?" And the little guy looks up at me. He goes, "I can't do it. You do it." And so I go over there and get it off the mantle. And I said, "You sure you want to give it to him? You okay?" And he goes, "I can't do it, but you do it." And so I handed it to Jesus, and Jesus looked at it, and he said, "This is locked." He said, "Do you have the key?" And I said, "No, I don't have the key." And I kind of looked down at the little guy, and he's reaching out of his pocket, and he's holding up the skeleton key. And I said, "Are you sure you're okay with this? You will give it to him?" And he asked me to give it to him. So I give him the key, and Jesus says, "Okay, I'll be back." And he leaves for a moment, and I'm just kind of blown. I mean, I'm just kind of blown away at the moment. And it's not long. He comes back in. The box is open. He's holding it, but this time when he walks in the room, the light's almost blinding coming out of the box. And it just illuminates the entire room, and the door's opened on it, and I look at it, and it's before it was all scarred up, bleeding, you know, just barely beating, and now it's all, you can still see the scars, but it's completely healed.
Wow. And
it's just shining. It lit the whole room up. And he stuck it back up on the mantle, and lit the room was just completely lit up. So it was just like he's just showing how he can take anything, take our flesh and heal it. I mean, it's just very symbolic for me, and that he took time to show me that he's healing my heart, and that he took my place. And it was just all many things like that throughout my life. I even have memories as a child of someone sitting next to me at my grandmother's funeral and say, "I knew your grandmother, and you're going to be okay." Because my grandmother was the first person I tried to tell that I was being abused.
Oh.
And so there's a story in the book about my grandmother's love. So it kind of goes like this. So, you know, she used to visit us and stay at the house with us, and I just loved having her there. You know, because before the memories all came back, I didn't have a lot of good memories of her, and but she would come stay with us, and she paid attention. She gave me attention. She would sit with me and she would talk to me, and I was important to her. And I just loved the way she smelled. I loved the way she hugged. And she was asking me this one particular time, what I like, what am I told her, my dad and I do things together. And she said, well, what kind of things like you do? And I said, well, I watched the car with him and stuff like that. She said, are there any special things you all do? And I said, yeah, there's just really one special thing we do. And I told her what I said. He touches me here. And the color went out of her face, and she just stunned her. And she just kind of went, oh my. And this, she said, then she kind of got her composure back. She goes, how often does this happen? And I said, I don't know. And she said, has it been going? I mean, she asked me a few questions, and I kind of got a little weird sense that her reaction wasn't good. And she just hugged me, and she hugged me. She started singing a lullaby. I don't even remember what the lullaby was, but I remember she was singing, and it was like she was praying the tune. It was just she was praying it and singing and humming at the same time. And I fell asleep laying on the bed there with her. And I woke up, she was gone, and I heard her and my mom arguing down the hall. And I smelled cookies cooking, so I ran down the hall, went to the kitchen. So, but before she left, she said that she said, I didn't need to worry about anything. She was going to take care of me. And when she left, I never saw her again. She passed. And Jesus showed me that later in the vision, the MDMA trial, the vision I had in there, the second session, I had a vision of seeing her. He let me meet her again.
Wow.
And she was young and vibrant, not how I remembered her as a grandmother. And she prayed for me before she passed, and she asked God to protect me. Now, you never underestimate the power a grandparent has over their grandkids. They have I think special power and spiritual power to be able to pray and can cover them. And so I think that it made that love of hers made a huge difference in my life, and I think that being able to see her again was cool.
Sure. Yeah. Wow. So Cynthia, how different is he now from when you first married him?
Oh, goodness gracious. Yes. So much more authentic, I guess you might call it, and sincere. And even at that time, he didn't know what was going on in the back of his head. And then when the flashbacks and the struggling and all that kind of stuff, there were a lot of rough years. I mean, we had good times, and we had our two girls, and we had, great vacations and things like that. But there was a lot of turmoil. There was a lot of times in our lives that I would say, I can make the girls happy, but I can't make you happy. So you take care of you, and I'm going to take care of the girls. And so we kind of, we just kind of existed together, because I just couldn't, there was nothing I could do to make him happy, whatever. Even if I participated in these things with him, as much as I hated it, it still didn't, nothing satisfied, and nothing was going to satisfy until he, put Jesus in that hole in his heart. But, so he's so much, now it's so worth it. So worth it.
We're living our best life.
We really are.
I mean, our marriage has never been any better. I mean, I think it's even much better than it was when we first got married. I mean, that was a young marriage.
That's right, young love. But yeah, now it's seasoned.
There's not much that phases us right now. I always kind of say we're hardened. Our marriage is so rock hardened.
Battle hardened.
We've been through battle hardened. Yeah.
Sure.
It's battle hardened.
We've been married 41 years.
Yeah. But we're
61 years.
We are closer now.
How old? We've been married 41 years. We're 60 something.
I can't
even think. My brain is done. Never mind. We've been married a long time. Got married in 82. How about that? Somebody can do the math for me.
But yeah, so what's really changed our marriage right now is that we've really for the first time brought God into it. You know, it's the three of us are married together, literally, and it's not, you know, I think that's where a lot of people miss it. Oh, I'm married to my wife. I'm married to, you know, but to do it the way we were created to be done, you have to be married to God too.
Yeah.
And when we did that and we submitted our marriage, and you know, we were very intentional, try to be intentional about it. He honors it. He's honored it, and he's healed our marriage, and we're just excited about where we're going next. So, but we just, you know, yeah, I wouldn't change a thing.
It was well worth it.
Well, Cynthia, God bless you. It's not easy to be married to an SRA survivor.
You're
God
right.
bless you. And
I always say if I had known going in, I'm sure I would have done it, but oh my goodness.
Yeah, I'm sure you and my husband could have quite a conversation.
It's just been quite a roller coaster. I'm sure he has.
And still on. You know, I don't know if you ever quite get off of that, but you know, God bless you. You know, he's still quite a ministry. And Randy, you know, what a story. God has done great things for you. You know, you talk about the resurrection power of Jesus coming in to rescue us.
Yeah.
And it takes nothing less than that to come into the midst of satanic rituals and be there with us.
Yeah. Where
they're blaspheming at him, and he's right there to get us through it. It's incredible.
Yeah. The story, it's I don't wish it on anybody. I hope nobody ever has to deal with it, but there's just, my heart is just broken for everybody who struggles with this and hasn't found their way back. And so if our ministry and our story will help somebody, it's worth it. It's been worth it for us to walk this journey, because I think everybody needs to have a chance at their best life. And we sure love ours. So.
Where can they find your book?
It's on Amazon. You can just Google Our Born Identity. It'll come up, or you can just Google Randy and Cynthia Lail, and it'll come up too.
Or Randy Lail, it'll come up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
So we had a prophet come on, and he did a shaking of the Luciferian kingdom prayer. And we've been ending the podcast with that. If you would be willing to repeat after me, are you okay with that?
Absolutely. Sure.
From where we're seated in Christ Jesus.
From where we're seated in Christ Jesus.
At the right hand of the Father.
At the right hand of the Father.
The Lord God Almighty says.
The Lord God Almighty says.
The time has come.
Time has come.
For the Luciferian kingdom to be shaken.
For the Luciferian kingdom to be shaken.
We decree.
We decree.
Let the great shaking.
Let the great shaking.
Of all who worship Lucifer begin.
Of all who worship Lucifer begin.
Your sorceries and sacrifices.
Your sorceries and sacrifices.
Will not help you.
Will not help you.
Your protection is removed.
Your protection is removed.
Let the shaking of the Luciferian kingdom increase.
Let the shaking of the Luciferian kingdom increase.
In Jesus' name, amen.
In Jesus' name,
amen.
Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us. Been an honor to be here.
Thank you. God bless you with your book. And again, the name is Our Born Identity. So go on to Amazon and bless them by getting your own copy. I was reading it today, and it is very well written. So you'll be glad that you did. Thank you.
Thank you.